a tremendous gentleman serving the people of Knoxville and the surrounding community. And I yield now to Mr. Jimmy Duncan of Tennessee.
Well, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And I first want to thank the gentlelady from Minnesota for giving me this time. She has been a real leader in this battle to try to restore some type of fiscal sanity to this government. And I can tell you this, I represent a little over 700,000 people in East Tennessee. Fortune magazine said in 2000 that the Knoxville area had become the most popular place to move to in the whole country based on the number moving in relation to fewest moving out. And for many, many years now, we've had a tremendous movement in of people from all over the country, and in fact, many from around the world. And so about half the people I represent have moved from someplace else. So I've got a real cross-section of people from almost every state in this country. And over these last few weeks, I can tell you from spending more time at home than I do up here that people in East Tennessee think we've just gone almost crazy up here, throwing around trillions just almost in a meaningless, haphazard way. And the gentlelady from Minnesota showed this chart a while ago which says President Obama's budget spends too much, taxes too much, borrows too much. And no truer words, Mr. Speaker, were ever said on this floor. The Congressional Quarterly just yesterday came out with a chart showing that we're going to add $1,840 billion to our national debt just this year. And then we're going to add another $1,370 billion next year and another $970 billion the year after that. In 3 years' time, we're going to add over $4 trillion to our national debt under the most optimistic scenario by the estimate of the Congressional Budget Office. And that comes on the heels of several weeks ago this Congress voting. Most of us in the chamber right at the moment voted against it, but the Congress voted to raise the national debt limit to $12,104 billion. That's an incomprehensible figure. Nobody can humanly comprehend that much, but we're going to add over $4 trillion to that. But what it means, Mr. Speaker, is this. In just a few years, we're not going to be able to pay all our Social Security and veterans pensions and all the things that we've promised our own people. I used to say, and I've heard many people say in the last few weeks even, what we're doing to our children and grandchildren is terrible, and it is. But actually, I think now we're doing it to ourselves, because I think that in 10 or 15 years, if that long, we're not going to be able to pay all these things we've promised our own people. And so it is, I think it is really sad what we are doing to the American people, because we're spending too much, taxing too much, and borrowing too much. Joe Scarborough said on his national television program just this morning, he said, we're like a doctor who has diagnosed diabetes in a patient but then prescribed a diet of cotton candy. He said, or we're like somebody making $100,000 a year who's suddenly gone out and bought 10 $1 million houses. He said repeatedly something that I've said many times over these last couple of months: we can't afford it. We're spending money that we don't have. And every place in this world and throughout history, when a government has gotten in the position that we're in, you either have staggering inflation or staggering deflation, and one is just about as bad as the other. I don't have a crystal ball to know which one we're headed into. My guess would probably be staggering inflation. But what we're doing is reckless, and what we're doing is dangerous. We passed a stimulus bill, and it had some good things in it, but once again, we were spending money that we did not have. And the Washington Post, which favored the stimulus bill, they had a front page story in which they said it was going to mean a massive financial windfall. That's their words, a massive financial windfall for federal agencies. Then they had another story a couple of days later in which they said tens of thousands of new jobs would be added on, or new hires would be added on by federal agencies. That's who's going to benefit from this stimulus package: first federal agencies, then state agencies. So bureaucrats all over the country are going to come out just fine, and maybe a little bit's going to trickle down to everybody else, but that's not who's hurting. This area is one of the wealthiest areas in the country, this Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland area, and yet they're going to receive a massive financial windfall, according to the Washington Post. And I saw on Lou Dobbs last week, he said 4 million jobs had been lost in the private sector in the last year alone. 4 million jobs lost, yet government payrolls had expanded by 151,000. And now, because of what we've passed up here, government payrolls are going to expand once again. But there have been so many exaggerations over what's going to be done with this money. A couple of weeks ago, a daily newspaper in Montana reported that the two Montana senators had put out a press release saying that 40 jobs were going to be created because of this, of a $1.3 million portion of the stimulus package. The paper went to that agency, and they said, that agency said, no, we've already got almost full employment. We're going to add 2 people because of this, and the rest of it's going to be spent on the employees that they already have. So I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed over some of this money that we're spending, and we're spending, as I said, money that we do not have. Now, 2 of the members from Ohio, my colleague Mr. Teaberry and the new member Mr. Austria, both mentioned coal and utility bills and things of that nature because it has such a great effect on their state. We have powerful people in this body that are attempting to cut way back and hopefully even to eliminate coal in this country. Well, I can tell you this, anybody who is supporting that is going to really hurt the poor and the lower income and the working people, because coal provides over 50% of our energy in this country today. And if we double or triple or quadruple these, if we cut way back on coal, we're going to double or triple or quadruple our utility bills, and we're going to hurt a lot of poor and lower income people. I have noticed throughout the years that most of the environmental radicals and environmental extremists in this country come from very wealthy or very upper income families. And perhaps they don't realize how much they hurt the poor and the lower income and the working people when they destroy jobs and drive up prices. But if they cut way back on coal, that's exactly what's going to happen. Our leader, Mr. Boehner, mentioned another thing. He said that this bill, and we heard a presentation from the ranking member of the Budget Committee just this morning, which said that the President's budget has $1.9 trillion in new taxes or tax increases in that budget. Jim Cramer, the famous stockman who's on television every night, and he has been a 6-figure contributor to the Democratic Party, he described the President's budget as the greatest wealth killer in history. And I'll tell you, that's a pretty serious charge coming from that source, the greatest wealth killer in history. And we just don't have enough people, Mr. Speaker, who understand, you know, there is waste in the private sector, but a business that continually wastes money cannot stay in business very long. But a government agency that wastes money, they just use that as a justification for getting increased funding the next year. So every dollar that we can keep in the private sector is going to do more to create jobs and hold down prices, because money in the private sector is spent so much more efficiently than is money that's turned over to government. Governor Edward Rendell, who is a former chairman of the Democratic Party, when he was mayor of Philadelphia, he testified before a congressional committee, and he said government does not work because it was not designed to. He said there's no incentive for people to work hard, so many do not. There's no incentive to save money, so much of it is squandered. That pretty much summed up the reason that money in the private sector is spent so much more efficiently than is money turned over to the government. So every dollar we can keep in the private sector, I repeat, will do more to create jobs and hold down prices. So we certainly don't need a budget that increases taxes by $1.9 trillion. It's been proven all over the world that when you let government get too big, what you do is you create this elite class at the top, you wipe out the middle class, and you create this huge starvation or underclass. And certainly we have all traditionally in this country had the biggest middle class in the world because we've kept our government. It's been very difficult, but we throughout history have kept our government one of the smallest in proportion to the GDP in this nation. So I know there are some other people who want to speak, so once again I just want to thank the gentlelady from Minnesota for her hard work and her leadership in regard to the fiscal condition of this government We need more people like her in the Congress, and it's an honor to serve with her, and I thank her for giving me this time today.